Welcome back, everybody. It's so great to have you all here again. 12 Takes is back with a new episode this week, and some new faces. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. Declan, welcome back, and I like the other two to please introduce yourselves.
Ivor, you want to
Go on.
start?
Did you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Caroline McKeon. I'm from Long Island, New York's third congressional district, and I'm going to be taking on the role of press secretary. So yeah,
I'm Iver Iverson. I'm from Idaho, co-founder and vice president. Excited to be here. Politics is something I'm very passionate about, and I think it applies to everyone in everything they do, no matter who you are. It's something we can find common ground in, and so this is a movement and a podcast I'm excited to create and be a part of. But to jump right into it, recently, Secretary Rubio, our Secretary of State, has said he's going to revoke Palestinian officials' visas so that they cannot attend the UN General Assembly coming up here soon. And that strikes me as odd because as an administration, Trump campaigned on a no war platform. He wanted no more war. He was very confident that he was going to lead through discussions and meetings and deals so that there would be no more war. He wanted to reduce conflicts in Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia. And so, for an administration that says they advocate not on board but conversation, it's interesting that you're not allowing people to participate in the conversation. The United Nations General Assembly is a large platform where each nation gets to send diplomats and they get to be a part of a larger conversation. I mean, there's some debate and argumentation around the validity and how much progress the UN actually makes, but there's no denying the fact that the UN is a conversation and it's a place to have that conversation. And so my question, I guess, would be why would a administration who campaigns on a platform of no war, but rather having a conversation, take away the opportunity for a conversation? And I want to know what you guys have to say about that.
I think
Well,
I'll
I think,
start. Actually,
go
no,
ahead, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, please, please. I want to hear from you.
I was just going to say that it's pretty plain, and this is not anything that has to do about diplomacy. I see it more as an erasure, and that the U.S. is really using visas as weapons to prevent Palestinians from being heard at all. And obviously, we know that in campaigns, things are said and things are promised, and things don't really come to fruition, as we've seen throughout this entire administration, the time they've been in office. But I think that this is just a blatant disrespect to what the UN actually stands for and what it is supposed to be composed of.
Yeah, I couldn't have stated it better. I think it all comes down to this administration has said a lot of things. Like, take the campaign out of everything. Like, they've said a lot of things that just don't come shown through their actions, right? And so it is, hey, we want to be inclusive. What have you shown to be inclusive? We want to be open and hear everyone's voices, but then we're kind of shielding away from First Amendment rights. So it's to me, what are we saying? Are we saying we're for this, but then our actions are saying something different? And I think that's basically what we're seeing with what's going on with visa rights. And like the press secretary said, it's used as a tool, right? And I think that we'll continue to see other things be used as kind of pawns in a scheme to kind of see if they can blatantly use more power. Because this administration has shown no concern for separation of powers, right? So they're going to continue to abuse power, and I think this is just another way of them doing that.
Absolutely.
Declan?
I mean, I
Anything?
got nothing to say, besides what really anything you guys said. But no matter what kind of aisle you are in sort of the conflict in the Middle East as of currently, I think everyone can kind of concede that it's ridiculous. There is, unless I can't really see any feasible reason why, besides the fact that this was like an ego move or just, another common move by the Trump administration. So.
Well, it's absolutely rigging the conversation around the discussion of the Middle East, and it just feeds resentment and it makes peace just absolutely impossible when we exclude Palestinians from the war that's going on in their country.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I
Yeah.
also think part of it is this administration's not open to criticism. They've made that very clear.
Absolutely.
Anytime a prominent figure or a prominent party member has come up to criticize the campaign themselves or the administration even, they aren't willing to open that dialogue. So, and we'll talk about it later, but the California governor, Gavin Newsom, is a big critic of Trump. And we see time after time that Mr. Newsom gets shut down repeatedly and without hesitation by the administration. And so I think this is another way that we see this idea come to light that the Trump administration is not open to criticism. We've had administrations in the past that I disagree with. There have been presidents in office in my lifetime and outside of my lifetime that I would fundamentally disagree with. But at the end of the day, they were open to criticism. The Biden administration and the Obama administration, the two before Trump, were open to criticism. When people in the other party disagreed with them, they were open to that dialogue, and we're just no longer seeing that within a party. Um, and I know last week you guys kind of touched about on the difference between like MAGA and Republican, and I think a lot of it is MAGA is not a political party in my opinion. It's this I the word is a cult. It's a cult. I mean,
I was waiting for you to
they
say
I
that.
was
they
waiting for you
follow
to say
him
it. Yeah.
blindly and they have no fundamental political beliefs. I'm a Democrat myself, but I listen and I have open dialogues with Republicans, and I think until this administration is willing to have open and like meaningful dialogue with other parties or other people that disagree with them so that they can like hear that, there's going to be no progress. And I think Secretary Rubio revoking these visas is not any sign that the administration will do that anytime soon.
Well, I
Not at
think
all.
ridicule in general of the Trump administration just punctures his like myth or the picture he's trying to create that he is like an authoritarian with strength when it just shows that
Mm.
he's actually fragile. The fact that he doesn't accept criticism, the entire administration doesn't accept criticism at all, just shows the American people that are listening that it's just a very fragile and disorganized, frankly, like administration.
Yeah. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Caroline said earlier about it makes it so incredibly difficult um to have a conversation, right? Let alone criticism, to have a conversation about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It makes it incredibly difficult when you only bring one side to the table. And we're seeing that with Ukraine and Russia too, right? We've heard conversations about a trilateral meeting, but every time they bring up the discussion of bringing Zelensky to the table, Putin walks away. You can't have a discussion. I know I'm going a little off topic, but you can't have a discussion, a bilateral, trilateral, multilateral meeting on a discussion when you don't bring all people to the table. And so we're seeing that right now as well. I think it's sad for a lot of people. And I kind of want to move on to the next topic, considering this conflict. This morning, we heard about an Israeli attack at a church in Gaza. Senator Van Hollen went with another senator to kind of talk with the people and check in on the people there in Gaza. I want to hear briefly from all of you. What do we make of this attack? I mean, constantly we've seen the Trump administration side with Netanyahu, not really puncture him or give him any criticism for his actions. This morning, I'm going to pick on the press secretary a little bit. Caroline Levitt was pressed about this, and she said that um, the Trump administration had a call with Netanyahu this morning and was not pleased. So again, we're kind of going back to words and not actions. They have left this alone. They haven't pressured Netanyahu to do anything. I think the most that they got out of Netanyahu was that he would put out a statement. Statements are not enough for human lives. So I kind of want to know what all of you think.
I think a lot of it is we have a president who appears strong to the American people. He wants to appear as this large figure, this powerful figure. But when you actually put him in a room with people who know what's going on politically, and as a diplomat, as much as I disagree with Netanyahu, he's a diplomat and a politician, and he's been a trained one. He knows what he's doing. And I don't think the president can handle that. So the president has said he will criticize Netanyahu when he does things like this, such as an unprecedented attack on a warship. But I don't think we're going to see that. I think it's just the president wants to look powerful in the public eye. And behind the scenes, he's getting tussled around. Netanyahu, time and time again, has shown that he doesn't care what the Trump administration says. He knows that what he's doing is benefiting him in some way and his
Yeah.
friends. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. Um, And he's not going to let Trump dictate anything he says. Trump wants the American people to think he has this hold over Netanyahu and this conflict in the Middle East, but in reality, he has nothing. I mean, if we continue to allow our president to not actually force what he said was going to be done on other world leaders. If he comes into the office saying he wants to hold this accountability over world leaders, that's fine. But he actually needs to do that. Otherwise, we're going to lose our country. Other world leaders are going to see that the United States president is weak and can be exploited and can be affected by money and power and corrupted by that. And if we continue to allow things like this to happen, it may only start with one warship today, but it snowballs. Eventually, it's a city, and eventually, it's more and more prominent places within the Middle East. And all of a sudden, we're going against a warlord. And I, that's exactly what I would call it, a warlord. And our president is not fit to fight against that. And if the Trump administration does not start ridiculing Netanyahu for his actions right now, I think we will lose our country.
Part of it is like his influence is like friendships. Like he talks about Putin and Kim Jong Un, like, oh, I have great relationships with them. Xi Jinping of China wants to meet with me. We're great friends. Like this image of his facade, right? That he has this influence and this strength, as you mentioned, Ivor. Part of it is just like friendships or what they use. Like I remember watching the debate against Kamala, and she's like, "You're gonna get played like a little boy." They're your friends, right? They're taking advantage of you. They're manipulating him. Frankly, I don't think that matters to him. I think he looks at it from a one dimension of what can I get out of this, as you mentioned, not what the American people need, not what we as a nation, as a world need. So yeah, I don't think he's fit to handle it either. Caroline, Declan, what do you guys think?
Go, Declan. Declan.
I mean, I definitely Trump relies a little too heavily on his perceived, like what he thinks of himself as a negotiator. He thinks these people are his friends. They're not. Xi Jinping is not his friend. Kim Jong Un is not his friend. Vladimir Putin's not his friend. No world leader ever is going to be your friend. It's an unfortunate fact of life. You're not going to be friends with someone from a competing nation or just any other nation, at least as a world leader. But kind of back onto the original topic of discussion, it is disappointing that only two people who hold positions in Congress
Mm,
decided to make the trip, especially considering watching the NYC governor debate. Like
Yeah.
everyone was saying, okay, if we're gonna make our first foreign trip, we're gonna make it to the area. Then, like, where were you then? Where are all the politicians who are
yeah.
saying they care so much about the area, whether it's Israel or Palestine? Where were they when 10 people get killed there
Mhm.
or an active war zone by one of the governments involved?
Yeah. I mean, as a New Yorker who was like involved in were you talking about the governor's bid or the mayoral election?
Oh, mayoral election. That's what I was thinking of. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think that coming from that part, I mean, I'm just speaking like primarily out of like New York. Like most New York politicians aren't going to Gaza. A lot of them
Mhm.
come from districts that are primarily Jewish, and so if anything, they would go to Israel, and that would make them look more on the side of like the Trump administration and how they've been like sort of moving towards the side of Israel, not really giving enough aid to Gaza and whatnot. But I think in general, I think there's a lot of talk happening from our Congress people and our senators and the Trump administration, but no action is being taken. I think back to Iver's point that everyone or Trump thinks that the world leaders are like his friends. Um, Nothing's happening within these meetings. No progress is being made because they don't. Again, like I'm reiterating what everyone else said, but they don't. No one sees him as a friend. Everyone just
Mhm.
and back to what Isaiah said. I'm really repeating what you guys said. Everyone said it all, but like everyone really touched on the points that I was going to make. But no, he's getting played, and not enough people are really calling it out because if something was going to happen, it would have happened already. It would be going on. This has been going on for years.
Yeah. Oh, and then go ahead, Declan.
No, no, continue, continue, my bad.
No, I was gonna say like that's what most people don't realize is like most people in America, and me and Declan touched on this last episode, are not educated. This
Yeah.
country's not educated. So people don't realize they think, oh, they turn on their TV one morning, like, oh my gosh, like all this has been happening the past couple months. No. This has been a conflict that has been brewing for years,
Years.
years, and people don't know that. People are educated enough to wake up and say, "Oh my gosh," like, "Oh, okay." And I think that one of the things that pisses me off the most, excuse me if I go on a little rant, is when Trump sits up here and says, "I've solved so many conflicts,"
No, you
right?
haven't.
He brags about all of these conflicts. Arjabon, and I forget the other country. They sat down in the White House and they talked, and he solved these big conflicts. Like, okay, you solved all these conflicts, and then he kind of talks about Ukraine, and that one I thought would be the easiest, but it's actually the hardest. I think to him that this is not and I don't say this lightly. These are not people. These are not conflicts. These are awards. And so I think we're seeing the same thing out of this administration about this conflict, about out of our Congress, most of our Congress. Of this is it's just another trophy on the wall. Oh, America solved this. People are dying here, right?
Yeah.
These are lives. These are children that are starving. And so I really respect Bernie Sanders for calling out this administration, saying, hey, as a Jewish man, there are things that we need to be doing to help these kids and these women dying, starving. Ivor, I know you had a point, our next point about Senator Sanders and something that he brought up this week.
Yeah. So Senator Sanders recently called for the retirement of RFK Jr., our current Health and Human Resources Secretary. And I think in the long run of things, this has been coming for a while. Um, the Traditionally the Health and Human Secretary role, Health and Human Services, sorry, has been filled by somebody with experience in that field, as a cabinet level position should. If you're going to be managing a cabinet that dictates the lives of everyday Americans, you should have experience in that field. And so traditionally, this role is filled by doctors and scientists and people with qualifications within that field. And when this administration came in, we saw it filled with someone who has no experience. I mean, RFK has exhibited no, he's not a doctor, he's not a scientist. I remember a senator reading a speech where RFK's cousin wrote a letter about him, and he was talking about all the crazy things RFK would do. And it just shows the man is not only not traditionally qualified to do the job, but like mentally qualified. And so I think in the long run of things, a lot of people have been unhappy with RFK Jr.'s tenure. The Democrats obviously have their criticism about him, and they've been very outspoken. But I think Republicans behind the scenes are upset about it too. I mean, RFK was a big advocate for the big beautiful bill, which shut down a bunch of rural hospitals. And so when you have a health and human services secretary saying, yeah, let's pass this bill, it's going to shut down a bunch of hospitals, but also we have a health crisis in the United States. It shows that not only is he not qualified as a person, but he's not seeing things logically. And so I think there's been a lot of discontent. And I think nobody's ever really called for the retirement of a cabinet secretary position because it's a nuclear move to do. I mean, this requires firing someone from a cabinet head position and then appointing a new person. And so I think it's a very noble act of Mr. Sanders to want to do that, to want to have this very unqualified person to drop out, but also there's no guarantee that the person he gets replaced with is any more qualified. If we've seen anything in this current cabinet, it's that we fill it with whoever has the most money or who's ever closest to the president. And so there's no guarantee. To me, it's a hard choice. It's like, do I agree with Senator Sanders and saying like, yeah, he's not qualified, let's get him out. But the other part of me is like, there's no guarantee what we get is better than him. So do we just stick out the 4 years and hope the next guy's better? I mean, I personally hope in the next election that there is a Democratic president and that the next Health and Human Services Secretary is somebody who agrees more with my views. But it's it's a hard thing because, like I said, on one hand, you get rid of him and you get rid of his unqualifiedness, but is the person he's replacing him going to even be qualified at all?
I'm gonna jump in because I am a big Bernie fan. I love Senator Sanders. And I think that what he's doing is something that Democrats should have already been done personally. And like drawing a giant blazing red line between like evidence-based policy and just like pseudo junk science that is RFK. And you're right, Iver. I mean, like we cannot guarantee that a replacement would be any better, but that's a risk we're going to have to take. Like people's lives are going to be heavily affected by this, and we can't just like pray it's going to get better or like and stick out the 4 years because there's going to be like irreversible damage done. So I think it's a risk that we would have to take. And I really do think that Bernie's not just criticizing RFK. He's like really sounding an alarm on public health. And because when the head of the HSS pushes anti-vaccine rhetoric, it's like it's not just like a quirky opinion that he has. It's a direct threat to children and cancer patients and anybody who relies on herd immunity. Like cancer patients, like it's people's lives are at risk, and he really like I think this is a really noble act of what Bernie is doing.
Yeah. I think kind of touching on what both of you guys touched on is like, do we take the risk? Because we already know what's going to come next. It's a yes man. President Trump, what do you want out of this department? You got it. Right? That's what we're seeing now. Is what you're going to get if there's a replacement. I agree. I love what Senator Sanders is doing. Me and Declan kind of touched on how this should have been done. Right? Like you mentioned, Caroline. You have to fight fire with fire. We can't stand back and watch this have people's lives at risk. People's healthcare is at risk. People's houses and children are at risk. Being able to put food on the table is at risk. This is not an everyday life, right? Like Iver touched on at the beginning, there are policies you may disagree with, right? There may things okay, I'm a Democrat, I don't like those policies. I'm a Republican, I don't like those policies. That's fine, disagree all you want. But I want to make something evidently clear tonight for all of you watching. We are not in a normal time. And I want to put that in all caps. This is getting normalized. This administration, what is going on, the overreach of power is getting normalized. I want to clarify in all caps for all of you watching, and I hope all of you will make clips and reels of this and repost this. We are not in a normal time. Get that in your head. Right? I know some people who say it's 4 years. People who voted for Kamala, people who couldn't stand any more of this, and Trump won the next day. I'm going to get on here and be very vulnerable. I cried when Trump won.
I think we all did, honestly.
Like, shedding tears out of my eyes, cried. And people are like, okay, it's just 4 more years. It's just a little longer. Trump gets in, we move out. It's fine. This is not normal. And I'm very scared to say that I don't know which is worse. He has 4 years and he gets out, and Vance comes in, or they rewrite the Constitution and he gets 4 more years and 4 more years and 4 more years. I don't know which is more different. I brought this up to Declan on last episode. I don't know if Vance is better or Trump is better. And that's a discussion we can disagree on. But Vance just replicates everything Trump says. It's quieter and he's more intelligent.
Yeah.
Trump is an idiot. I just want to put that out there.
Absolutely.
Vance is smart. Vance knows what he's talking about. So I know I'm getting off topic. But back to RFK. Yes, if you take a risk on this, it will be another yes man. It will be someone who's better. Probably smarter. But just someone who behind the scenes gets the president everything he wants. Like you've mentioned, Iver, that's the whole cabinet. It's people who sit around him and say, oh my gosh. Have you guys watched a cabinet meeting? I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a rant. Have you guys watched a cabinet? They spend 10 minutes glazing him before.
I was going to say that. It's like absolute glaze.
It's 10 minutes of glazing before they even get to policy. Like, I literally want to laugh. Like, they say, Mr. President, I want all of you guys to drive down the avenue. You have your big face on the Department of Labor. Like, people are losing their jobs. Secretary of State is cutting jobs. Secretary of Health and Human Services is cutting jobs. People are losing their money, how to provide. And they're up there putting faces of President Trump on big buildings, national buildings.
Well, on that same sentiment, and I think this is true for the whole cabinet, not just RFK, the problems that they're causing do not affect people like them.
Nope.
at all. They don't have family members that this will affect. They don't have friends that this will affect. This is about being in the elite 1%. What they are doing is not irreparable damage to their people, to their community. This is about they don't see these people that they're affecting, so it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on that same idea about the issues not actually affecting people like them, when the 2024 election happened, like Isaiah and like everyone else, I was very upset that Harris didn't win. I wanted a Democratic president in the Oval Office, and I didn't get it. Instead, I got a man who wants to be a dictator. I mean, we'll talk about later, but President Trump recently just said people might not mind having a dictator, which is an insane thing to say and a scary thing to hear come out of a world leader's mouth. But the one thing people told me the day after the election when I came into school and was upset is, why do I care?
Mm.
Because I am a straight white male who is not poor, I'm comfortable. Why do I care? And what I said to them was, because first, they take the rights of smaller minorities and then more minorities, and I don't speak up because it doesn't affect me. And then it gets to me, and nobody else is left to speak up for me. And there's also the fact that Trump doesn't care about anyone except himself. When he can no longer take when he can no longer take rights from LGBTQ or African Americans or Venezuelans or Hispanics or Latinos, the only person left is the straight white male, and he will take my rights just as quick. So that's why I care.
Crap. Go ahead and finish that statement, Iver.
Right. Yeah, I was just saying that like Trump doesn't care unless you are in his tight group of people, which is him and the cabinet. Um, you, you're being negatively affected, and people our age who think they're going to be fine, they're not, because if he rewrites the Constitution and takes another 4 years and another 4 years and another 4 years, eventually he's going to run out of people to take rights from, and it's going to be the people we view as the majority. And because the truth is, he only cares about himself. And so, I mean, what we're seeing in the cabinet right now is nothing we should be happy about or proud about, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, or anything. You should not look at this cabinet. You should not look at this leader and say, wow, he's doing great things. And I mean, that kind of moves us into our next point of Trump said in an interview in the Oval Office this week that some people wouldn't mind a dictator um, because of the so-called situation in the United States right now. I know last week you guys talked about a little bit about the National Guard and stuff like that. Um, I think this National Guard move is just a step closer to declaring martial law. He's normalizing this military state, and eventually, when he does say, okay, we're in martial law, I'm postponing the election for 10 years, everyone's just like, kind of like, okay, we've been living with um, loaded M16s on our streets for the past 2 years, so who really cares, you know? And it's, I want to make it clear there are people that would mind having a dictator. And I think if he tries to go for a dictator, he'll see an uprising. I mean, I have this conversation a lot with friends if we think we'd ever see another civil war, and I always say no, just because of the geography of things, how Democrats and Republicans are split. I always say no. But the reality is in America, we have 10 guns for every person. So I think if enough people disagreed with him rewriting the Constitution and becoming this self-proclaimed dictator, we would see infighting. And I think it would go against. So I mean, statement to Trump, there are people out there who don't want a dictator, and you're going to have to address them if you want to do this. So it's it's something we have to keep an eye on.
Coming
I
off of your point of like, oh, sorry, you guys, you want to go?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll hold my thoughts.
Oh, okay. Um, Coming back off of your point, Ivor, of like normalization. I think the entire administration is just like a straight up authoritarian like conditioning And Trump is really just saying like the quiet part out loud that he believes people would accept dictatorship if things got done, even though like nothing's getting done. And that's really just like fascism 101. It's manufacturing chaos and then you're selling yourself as the only solution, even though we know that the real solution is getting these people out of our government.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to touch on a couple things that both of you just touched on. I promise I want Declan to talk after because he hasn't talked like 3 segments. One is what you just said. It starts small. Oh, I'm the only solution. I traveled to Europe this summer. I went to a camp called Dachau. It was one of the camps, concentration camps. I could not talk the entire time I was there, except when our group leader asked us questions, and nobody else wanted to answer questions. And I started answering historical questions about what happened in Nazi Germany, the uprisings. It started off small. It was an election. Hitler won the election. He said, I will solve all your problems. The Jews are the problem. Get them out. It started off small. And then it's, I'm the only solution. Look at what I've done. And it was a bunch of stuff that had not really been done, but to the human eye, it was progress. Right? So he started off as the only solution. Look at what I've done. If I leave office, then all this is going to fall apart. It started with a scapegoat. It was the Jews. Right? Now it's immigrants. They're the scapegoat. And now he's using crime as a scapegoat too. Don't misunderstand me. Crime is a real problem, but the statistics are not matching what's coming out of his mouth. So he's using crime as another reason to go about what he's doing. Iver touched on if we would ever have another civil war, excuse me. I have that conversation with my granddad all the time, Iver. My granddad was born, my granddad's father, excuse me, was born a little bit after the Civil War ended. Probably like those couple first years of Reconstruction. And so my granddad lived through the Civil Rights Movement. He talks to me all the time, especially in the South. I know I had conversations with you guys all in DC about how far the South is behind the rest of the nation. We have conversations about all the time. If another civil war could happen, you touched on geography. You know, you have California as a blue state, you have New York who's a blue state. So it's not one half of the country against the other. But I do believe that we could have another one. I think people, like you said, Iver, are standing up right now, right? There are millions of protests in red states and blue states across this country that they are not okay with what is happening. I saw a military veterans protest today, and they were speaking up. So like, hey, we're veterans. This is not okay, right? This is not okay. And I want to touch back on that again. We are not in normal times. This should not be happening. And for anyone who does not, don't take our word for it. Like that's the biggest point I want to throw out there is the four of us are amazing. We're educated. We love politics. Please chime in, listen to us, but don't take our word for it. Go and look at what's happening through a non-political, non-biased lens. And you tell us if you think it's okay. Declan, I want to get you in here.
Yeah, it's it's almost like comical and sad how accurate the Nazi Germany like
Yeah.
comparison is. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone that the German people elected Adolf Hitler as their leader,
Yeah.
even after he tried to stage a revolt against the government. Sound familiar? Um,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking a
but
lot about civil war, but I really think it would be a coup, honestly. Like they raided the Capitol. I really do think that would be so similar to that because yeah, geography
for
does
sure,
split
yeah.
a lot of people up. It would totally be another coup, attempted overtaking of the government to an extreme level because people aren't being heard.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, it's been shown that like even if Trump gathers like 10,000 of his wackos, only, a very small group of his people and they can go over try and overthrow the government and almost succeed. But, you know, I think we can only hope that it doesn't get to that point. But to a certain extent, I think it's a very realistic outcome that like there's already so many people who are fed up with Trump and his voter base is turning on him slowly. And his voter base is the one who generally tends to own most of the firearms in this country. So once his voter base completely turns against him, like the Epstein stuff was just the tip of the iceberg. Like there's gonna be more stuff that MAGA people are gonna like, and then maybe we'll just have January 6th, 2020, what be 2029 at that point.
Yeah. And
I hope.
touching on that point, Declan, about like this like kind of fighting with guns. Like, yeah, his voter base has turned against him, and um, it's kind of widely known Republicans typically advocate for looser gun rights, so they're going to own more of the guns. I own guns myself, living in a red state. I understand how loose the restrictions are. But I think Trump understands that. He understands his voter base is turning against him. Statistically, Trump's term right now is the second lowest um, approval rating for president in history, and the first lowest is his first term. So he knows people are turning against him. They're discontent with what's going on, and I think he understands that. And I think that's why, moving into kind of our next topic, is recently Secretary Hegseth approved the National Guard in DC to carry firearms. Uh, just to give some like kind of unbiased facts so people understand the situation, Secretary Hegseth said the Department of Defense would be fine if the National Guard in DC were to carry their firearms, typically M16 rifles, with them, but the decision is up to the brigade general. So if the brigade general says, yes, we're going to um, take out our firearms, they would be taken out of the holding they're in that's in DC right now, and they'd be distributed to the National Guard. But what Hegseth basically said is if the Guard wants to arm themselves and finds it necessary for their mission, the Department of Defense and the Trump administration is fine with it. And so I think that's Trump saying, like, I understand people may revolt up against this and I need to arm my people. I lived in DC for 6 months. I've been to the parts of DC that Trump said were dangerous and that needed the National Guard. They aren't. Um, I understand my situation may be different walking around as a lone male in those areas, but even other people that I lived with said they never felt at risk. I mean, there's some homelessness around the Georgetown area further out, but the homelessness I ran into, nobody was dangerous. There wasn't anything, and if there was crime, it could easily be handled by the police. You don't need a National Guardsman in his tank to take care of the homeless issue in Georgetown. What you need is a respecting president, somebody who actually cares. But I mean, the guard is not in DC to protect crime. The guard is there in DC to protect Trump because I think he knows something's coming and he needs the guard there to defend him. And I think that's what I have to say about that.
I gotta hop in on this because like I'm just thinking about this. I was at Yale later in the summer. New Haven is not a great area. Even like right on campus at Yale, it's still not great. It's still not a very safe area. I like I've there are several people at my event who like genuinely had homeless people like spring onto them and try to assault them. But it's like Iver said, they're if they sent the National Guard to New Haven, that's makes sense. Their police is completely incompetent. But that's not where it's going. And if you think about that for a whole 5 seconds, then you realize it's because either one, Trump's trying to become a dictator, which he'd already be trying to do something that he already is. And then two, it's just he wants to protect himself. He doesn't care about solving the actual problem.
I think jumping off of that point, um, specifically in DC though, I think coming off of Ira's point about like what protecting himself from what's coming, we really should just call it what it is. It's a attempt to intimidate protesters, especially young people and communities of color who have led the big justice movements of the last decade.
Mhm.
When we let guns define safety, we truly just erode democracy. And real safety comes from like housing and healthcare and education, not troops on the street. Like if we really want to do something about this homeless people problem, we have to implement changes that get these people a place to stay. And arming the National Guard in the nation's capital is a dangerous step towards normalizing like the militarization of civic life. And that's what authoritarian regimes do. They put soldiers with rifles on every corner and call it security.
Yeah, and I think that's so critical is to look at this from a perspective that not many do, right? Um, Protesters, right? They are using intimidation as a factor. Um, that is what this is being used for. We talked about Georgetown and all of us attending there. They are literally, I saw a reel, we talked about it with Declan last episode. of the one of the streets that we walked on to get to where the professor what was his name? Oh gosh, I forgot. One of our professors that talked to us and gave us lessons in a room on Georgetown Street. I've seen those National Guardsmen walking on those streets. It's bad, and it's not for protection. Backing off of what Caroline said, guns are not protection. There are other ways to institute protection. Um, on the defense, and then we'll move on to other topics. I also saw something come out yesterday that today the Defense Department has agreed to place a poster, a painting, excuse me, of Robert E. Lee back at West Point. And for those of you that don't know, West Point is a base used heavily in the Civil War. Ulysses S. Grant defeated a huge Confederate army at West Point during the Civil War. Just to let all of you guys know, as a young black man in the United States, I don't really, and this is a topic we can discuss another time. In the South, we've had issues with Confederate statues coming down. I don't necessarily want to see my Defense Department, which has hundreds of millions of young African American men and women enlisted in the Army, to have a Confederate soldier general commander painting at a military base in the United States in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really bad. There's nothing you can say about that other than that's like really terrible.
I,
But
I
do,
gotta.
yeah, no, you go, Declan. I'm gonna go on a
I'm
tangent.
sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but like I
No,
gotta
I'm
camp.
gonna go on a tangent. Please stop me. Like,
I gotta piggyback on this. Like speaking of the army specifically, young young people of color are enlisting more than most white Americans are. They're literally the ones keeping our U.S. Army alive. It's ridiculous to place one of the most hated people and one of the most racist people in history at an army base full of people who are keeping your army alive, who are also people of color.
I really do think it's ironic coming off Declan's point, but I really do think the purpose of it is that the Trump administration is really trying to put in a more rigid, if for lack of better words, caste system in our country, and we've seen that through policies, and we see it through this painting. We're trying to get rid of the definition of equality and bring back this sort of ranking of the values of American people or how they hold value. And clearly, that painting is just showing that they don't think that equality for people of all color has any value.
just want to leave off this segment with this. Never has another country in the history of our world, history of this world, glorified the losing side, traitors of the battle. I'll just leave that segment with that. Um, I kind of want to move on. Like you said, Caroline, I'll get into a little bit of a tangent too.
Yeah.
We really want to talk today, specifically when I have the great press secretary and the wonderful vice president on, about Congress and youthful movements across this country. One of the reasons Iver and I founded the principle of the Next Up Coalition is because we want to see young politicians, and it doesn't even have to be if you're in love with politics. I just want to put that out there. Young people who want to see a change in our country and around the world, right? We want to see a good movement of change. And so I really want to talk extensively with all of you about what can we, as youthful servants in this country, do to better our politics. I think for far too long, youth across this country have kind of touched on what Iver said, especially here in the South. Look at an outcome of an election and say, well, why does it matter? I don't care. Like, okay, it's 4 years. It's 6 years in the case of senators. Whatever. I'm cool. Like, whatever. The people go in, they come out, or they get up there, they make a lot of money, and they stay. Like, at the end of the day, government doesn't represent me. It's never done anything for me. So why do I care? And so I really want to key in on why the four of us are on this phone call today and what youth needs to do to stay in the face of politics.
For me,
My God, why do we keep talking at the same time? You go.
sorry, do you want to go?
No, you go. You know more about this than me, honestly.
Right. For me, a lot of why youth need to become involved in education is because right now we are going to be the people here in 60 years when these problems come to the surface, when they fully live out to what they're going to be. I I talk to people all the time in my line of work and I say, what do you want to say to the new generation of politicians, and they say all of them want to say sorry because they've left our generations with all these problems. Global warming wasn't us. Drug epidemics wasn't us. High homelessness rates wasn't us. Inflation wasn't us. None of the issues right now are things we have actively caused. We may contribute to them as the youth. I mean, we global warming is a everyone problem, but no nobody in our generation actively made legislation that made people lose their jobs. And so I think why we need to be involved is because we're the ones dealing with the issues. We can't just inherit these issues and do nothing about it. We can't inherit a world full of homelessness and addiction and poverty and corruptness and just let it sit because then we just pass it off to the next generation. And then, I mean, ideally, we want to see progression throughout the generations, not regression. So I think if you struggle to find yourself wanting to be involved in politics and you find yourself saying like it doesn't affect me now, so why should it? You you should think about the future. In 60 years, you're inheriting these problems. You're you're going to be buying a house in 20 years. You're going to be having student loan debts. You're going to be possibly starting a family. You're going to be working. You're going to be doing all these things that the problems now are going to affect you. So why would we not start now to fix them? So I think if you have issues relating to politics, you just need to look inside and say, I want to be involved to make my future better and the future of the next generation better. This generation has shown that they didn't really care about the results of what happened. And now we're inheriting it. So we can change that. We can be the change we want to see and say, okay, we inherited a pretty shitty economy. Let's make the economy for the generation below us better. So, in terms of actually doing that, it's easier than people think. I think people, when they talk about political involvement, jump to the max. They say, oh, I don't want to run for office, or I don't feel safe attending a protest, or I wouldn't even know how to testify in front of a committee. You don't have to do that. It's the matter of normalizing the conversation of politics. Right now, I talk with people in my school who can't even have a civil conversation with me because I'm a Democrat and they're a Republican. And the more and more youth discuss politics, just in everyday life, just saying, why do we have to do standardized testing? That's politics. There's
Mhm.
laws saying we need to do
Yep.
standardized testing. That's politics actively affecting us. So if we can have that peaceful conversation and say, this is why I think it's good, I think it's bad, and just be like, okay, at the end of the day, we get along. That's how we create a useful generation of politics. But if you are looking for more ways to get involved and you just don't know how, there's a lot you can do. Attending protests is a big one. You have a First Amendment right. I know this administration's trying to take it away, but you have that First Amendment right. Exercise it. Call your congressman, call your senators, call your governor, call your state senators and your state representatives, call anyone and just talk. Just list your grievances and they have to listen. That's their job. They work for you. You don't work for them. Stuff like that. But I think the biggest thing our generation needs to keep in mind is being educated. Right now, the current administration, like we mentioned earlier with Secretary Kennedy, these people aren't educated. Um, I I watched the committee. I was in the committee room when Attorney General Pam Bondi said habeas corpus was a right, a constitutional right that the president has to deport people from this country.
Absolutely not.
Anyone confused, habeas corpus is your constitutional right to know why you're being arrested. So if you get arrested and you think you habeas corpus is them allowed. No, you have a right to know why you're being arrested, but nobody knows what's going on. They're not educated. And so I think as youth, we need to become educated. We need to study what we're passionate for. We need to learn. We need to just intake that information and then make progress with it. Say, okay, I spent 4 years in college becoming a doctor and I really want to make change in the world. What can I do? Work for Health and Human Services. God knows we could use somebody new in there right now. So I think The reason we aren't involved in politics a lot is because we're scared of it. And we only become less scared of it if we're exposed to it more. And so I think parting thoughts on that would just be start having a conversation a week with a family member, with a friend, keep it respectful. If it starts getting heated, cut the conversation there and try again the next week. But we just need to have more conversations. More conversations lead to more education because you bring up a point or somebody brings up a point in a conversation you want to learn about, so you go and learn it. Once you learn it, you say, okay, well, I want to argue that point more, or I want to see real change in that. And then I don't know. I mean, you may become a lobbyist like me, or you may become somebody who writes legislation like Isaiah. You may do something further than that, and that's how you get more and more involved in politics. It's a stepping ladder, and no, but I mean, with the exception of the current president, nobody goes from no political involvement to the highest office in the land. And so, if you want, it's a step ladder. I mean, you can
Yeah.
stop at any point on it. You can start at the bottom rung of just having conversations and stop there, or you can go from there. And so, I think if we want a useful generation of politicians, it just is education and conversation because we need to listen to both parties. We can't, no single party has it right. I've had Democratic presidents in my lifetime that I disagree with. I mean, some of the things President Biden did, I disagreed with strongly, and he's in my own party. And so we need to listen to the other parties and the other ideologies in the world to make progress that benefits all of us. And so I think um, the biggest thing would just be have those conversations and be open minded.
Before anyone says anything else, just let me say one thing, please. And I promise you, I just have to get this out. 3 words. 3 words. It's gonna blow your guys' mind.
Okay, come on.
We the people. What can you guys do? It's plain. It's right in front of your eyes. The stepping ladder that Iver touched on. You can go as high as you want. You can stop wherever you want. But this administration, this government, the ideology of politics as a whole, the ideology of leadership, they work for you. He talked about calling up your representatives, calling up your senators, and they have to listen because that's their job. One of my favorite speeches from Martin Luther King is his speech called Somewhere I Read. And he constantly talks about somewhere I read of the First Amendment. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read, he constantly refers to the Constitution. We the people, guys. Why should you care? Because it's for you. It's for you, by you, with you. I hate to be that guy, but you guys, the majority of people elected him, you enabled him. It's by you. He works for you. But the minute that people as a whole start cutting him off, he can't do it without you. That goes for President Trump. That goes for President Biden. That goes for President Washington. That goes for President Grant. Administration as a whole is by the people, for the people, with the people. And so we the people, it is up to us to work for it, by it, and with it. And so that's what you guys can do. Politics is not, oh, I want to be the president of the United States. That's my dream. I know Iver has that aspiration. Doesn't mean I'm the governor of Georgia, the governor of Idaho, the governor of New York, the governor of New Jersey. Those might be dreams you have. But politics is just being involved. It's having the decency to look across your shoulder and say, hey, that person matters. Hey, that person matters. I promise I'm done. I said 3 words, but I want to finish with this. Iver touched on this earlier. And me and Declan talked about this probably a good 10 minutes, our last call. We don't care about it until it affects us. I'm here to shut that. I'm here right now to shut down that ideology right now in this moment. Maybe I was raised differently. I mean, you guys got to know me really well in DC. If I had the belief that it doesn't affect me until it's me, I would get slapped in the face. My mama would give me a good old whooping. Because I was raised better than that. I guess everybody isn't. I guess not everybody was raised with the human decency of caring about your neighbor. In the great words of President Obama, we are our brother and sister's keeper. Maybe I was raised differently, but politics is just saying, hey, it isn't just all about me. How do we become more inclusive? How do we become more together? In the great words of President Grant, one of my favorite presidents, how do we become a more perfect union? And I know President Obama and President Biden have coined that as well. How do we become a more perfect union? It's conversation. It's talking about the conversations we don't want to have. Iver touched on that. Sometimes conversations are not pretty, but they're conversations that need to be had. Because what happens when we stay quiet and we sit back? Things like what are going on in that shit house, hell house, excuse me, of the White House right now. I don't know what's going on. But I'm glad some of us are standing up and speaking out. And I urge more of you to come along with us. Caroline, I know you wanted to speak.
You really took everything I was gonna say, man. You keep doing that. I have nothing left to say other than the fact that back to the point where you guys said it was a politics like a stepping ladder. I really do think that we shouldn't be waiting for national politics, and that it's good for young people to get involved in school boards and city councils and state houses. And like I saw so many young people involved in the New York City mayoral election. Like getting involved doesn't have to be on such a large scale, and I think that's what intimidates people. So I'll just say that.
Yeah. Iver, I know you gotta go. I'm just gonna hold you up for one last second while I say this. I think one of the ways that we can not only make the political landscape better, but improve just everyone's daily lives is just admitting when we're wrong. That is something so many people are just completely unable to do. And I think it's a skill that we've lost because of how social media algorithms kind of like reinforce your own thoughts and your ideologies. But it is very important to admit when you're wrong. I, I before the election, I thought, Trump is a terrible candidate, but even if he gets elected, I'm not going to leave the country because, there's only so much he can do. I admit it. I was wrong. I didn't expect literally everyone to bend the knee. Me and Isaiah literally spent our entire episode talking about this. Literally everyone bent the knee.
Yeah.
So the whole point,
it's like it could be worse situation. Like, it can't get worse than this. It could be worse.
Oh, it could get,
yeah. But it really could be worse.
Yeah.
And it will be.
It is very important for especially young people because we have to deal with a lot of kind of people older than us from older generations who thought they had it hard when they really, especially with baby boomers, they kind of had a great economy handed to them, great landscape, great everything. You gotta have, even if you don't like to be, you have to be a bit more respectful than you would with someone like if you were Gen Z talking to a millennial, you gotta be more respectful talking to, baby boomer, which are the majority of politics, unfortunately. That's all I gotta say. Iver, I know you gotta leave.
Absolutely off that point being baby boomers are the majority of politics. The youth vote is very diverse and progressive and massive. If 70% of people came out instead of 30%, the political map would shift overnight.
For sure. Yeah. That's the problem.
Problem. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, I saw a percentage in this past election of like it literally showed a percentage of okay, this is how many people voted for President Trump, this is how many people voted for Vice President Harris, and then this is the percentage that didn't show up. And that percentage was at least just about 5% smaller than what President Trump got.
Well, that goes back to the point, like, why should I care?
Yes.
People come out to vote. It's all interlinked.
It is 100%. Yeah. And people think, oh, why should I care? My voice doesn't count. Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Every vote counts.
When your voice doesn't count, and then Declan's voice doesn't count, and then Caroline's doesn't count, and then Iver's doesn't count.
It adds up.
Those 6 add up, and then your voice does count. So let me tell you something. Your voice does count. Your actions matter. Get up, stand up, speak up, and get involved. I want to reiterate and summarize what everyone just said. It doesn't have to be, I take this oath to be president of the United States of America. I take this oath to be governor of the, whatever. It doesn't have to be that. Get involved in your local community. Go to a school board, as Caroline touched on. Go go help in like voting booths in your local elections. Go pass around flyers for the candidate you support. It doesn't have to be huge, but you getting involved and using your voice is what matters. And so I do want to summarize with that. I think it's so, so, so important. We have one more thing to talk about. Iver, if you need to go, you can kind of say your goodbye, summarize. But I think we have one more topic to talk about if you'd like to stay. It's up to you.
I'm good to stay, so
Okay.
I just
Our last topic um, is speaking on a senator. Actually, we've spoke on a couple in the last episode. Well, not senators, excuse me, governors. We talked about redrawings. I kind of want to talk about Senator Ernst. And for those of you that don't know who Senator Ernst is, I'm sure I'm going to put a smile on everyone's face when I kind of coin one of her most particular phrases. We're all going to die. we're all going to die.
All right. All
Senator,
right.
Senator Ernst attended a rally from her in her district, her state, excuse me, where her consensus of people, we can if you need to. The consensus of her people basically set up and said, hey, we don't like these cuts you're making to Medicaid and Medicare. What are you going to do about it? People are dying. And she coined, we're all going to die. She is not seeking reelection. And I think that's a smart decision by her. I want to get your thoughts on that for all of you. And should more people, part of this agenda, not seek reelection? So I want to ask all of you guys. Senator Ernst, is not seeking reelection. I think it's a wise decision for her not to do so. I guess my general question is, should this be a formal resignation for other congressional members that have continued to stand by this administration?
I think I just want to say one thing first. I think the resignation of GOP senators we're seeing lately, and House reps as well, is their way of saying like what Trump is doing is way too far, but we're too scared to openly stand against him, so we're just out. It's not going to be our problem. Recently, South Carolina Senator Tom Tillis chose not to seek re-election, and Governor Roy Cooper is looking to fill that seat. Um, and I think it's GOP senators and House reps saying, like, I can't stand up against Trump. He'll crush me. And so I'm just going to step out. And so I think the senators who choose to leave are brave. I commend them for that because while I wish you would stay in the Senate and stand up against this, if you understand you don't have the guts to do it, I respect you for stepping down and leaving the spot open for somebody who has the guts to do it. Um, I wish you could stand up against your own party, but thank you for leaving the opportunity for someone else to do it. As for the question of like, is this something other senators should be doing? I don't think so. Because while they are bending at the knee of this administration, these are the people that constituents of their states picked. They said, I like that guy or I like that girl. They represent what I believe in. And they're only in this unfortunate position because of a bad president. So I think they shouldn't retire, but instead they should understand and like band together that, yeah, if one senator goes against Trump's word, he's going to destroy them. That's any president has the power to do that. But I think what they really should do instead of just resigning is understand that if they band together, they can overpower this and they can take down this corrupt administration. Because as much as Trump wants to go around Congress, if they really chose to fight, they could make his agenda dramatically slower. And so I think it's honorable that Ernst and Tillis have stepped down and given the opportunity to somebody who may have the guts to stand up. I know Governor Cooper is running for the South Carolina seat. He's a Democrat. That would be a voice out against Trump. I don't, nobody has placed a bid yet for Senator Ernst's seat, but chances are with the state she lives in, Iowa, it's going to be a Republican filling the seat. So it's that same question of should RFK retire? Is his replacement going to be better? Is her replacement going to be better? But I think like leaving that spot open for somebody who may fight out against this is good. So, I mean, that's what I have to say on the issue of like stepping down and reelection. But other than that, I do have to go. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk, and hopefully, I'll be back at some point.
Thank you,
I
Iver.
a
Yeah.
pleasure to have you. I know to hear from you again. Bye.
Let's see you face to face again.
Yeah.
um, and so that leaves the question for both of you is, as Ivor touched on, like it opens the door for an ideal of how about we stand together, band together to stand up, but do they want to stand up is the question.
No one can say it better than Iver. He's so well spoken. But yeah, he really just covers every single base. But no, I mean Ernst stepping aside is like showing everybody that there's a crack in the GOP wall, and how like Republicans do love to brand themselves as the party of strength and the party of like everything and this and that. But like behind closed doors, the incumbents are tired of defending this indefensible agenda. And again, like jumping off of Iver's magnificent point, like is someone going to do it if they fill the seat? And that's just something that you have to consider if more people are going to step down. Is it going to be better or is it going to be the same old thing? And I do think that Ernst is giving it an opportunity to people to an opportunity for people to say something because she won't. And also, I do think that like people speaking out against the Trump administration, like it does put a risk at their state to their state. I do see like we've seen cuts to funding in many states for speaking out. I do think it's a valid concern. I think it's terrible that Trump is using his power in such an egregious way to cut the funding to these states just for having their opinions and exercising their rights. But I do think it is something that has to be heavily considered when speaking out. The repercussions, the consequences of doing so when we have an authoritarian style dictator in our office.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Kind of just going off what you mentioned. I think one of the things that Mom Donnie's campaign showed to me, at least, is that grassroots political movements are
Oh yeah,
back and better than ever.
I could talk about this for hours, Declan. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
they're back and better than ever. It's just we have to rally around a candidate, and we can't have a lot of the same like nonsense that the left has had in previous years. Like, a notable example, it was of a candidate that the people wanted that maybe the actual group didn't want themselves was Bernie Sanders. Everyone remembers how he got pretty much ousted, even though he was the actual people's favorite.
America wasn't
Uh,
ready for it.
yeah, America was not ready for Bernie, but I think I think we have to roll the dice on new representatives on either side of the political aisle because I mean, there's no way for anything to change. Like we can keep with I'd rather like I understand the argument of I'd rather take the devil I know versus the devil I don't. But I
Mm,
think in this situation, the devil I know cannot be any worse than the devil I don't.
agreed. I mean, going back to what you said about Mondami's campaign, like we need more people like him showing up and giving it a shot. Like the guy was a SoundCloud rapper for God's sake. Like the last person you'd expect to hold an office of such a major city. But we saw this incredible ambition and this unwavering confidence to speak out against Cuomo, who is ridiculous. But
Yeah,
we need more people like that to take a shot. And
yeah,
it was amazing to see what happened when he did. Obviously, so many people rallied around him. He didn't need the super PAC money. He got the people to work with him. But that's just not having confidence and not having the fear of failure. And then we need to see more ambitious people like that stand up on the national level.
yeah. As a New Jerseyan, this is not necessarily on the national level, but Musab Ali, he's running for mayor of Jersey City.
Oh, I met him. He's great.
He's
Love
a
him.
he's great. I love him.
Love him.
He's like he is like Mamdani is like a very clear New Yorker, and that's stereotypical New Yorker type. Well, Musab Ali is the stereotypical New Jerseyan.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I love him personally. He's like my idol. He's my spirit animal, but
That's great. That's cool. I think that's what it comes down to, right, guys? Is like we can have a conversation about PAC money at a later time, but
Oh, we
having
could have many conversations about that.
people represent you, because for far too long it's been the people who are going to Congress, the people who are going to Washington don't represent what I want. Okay, I once heard a very famous wise man say that if you don't like how the table is set, flip over the table.
Who said that?
If
Who said
that, guys, that's for me. I have to keep that a little bit. Uh,
Are you the wise man?
I'm not the wise man. No, one of my favorite political series is called House of Cards. Frank Underwood. Um, Frank Underwood. If you have not watched House of Cards, go check it out. But Frank Underwood once said, "If you don't like how the table is set, flip over the table." Listen, for far too long, we've sent people who don't represent us. You don't like what they're doing, then get them out. The Constitution says that people have the right to alter or abolish it and reinstate new forms of government. If you don't like who's representing you, get them out. We talked about stereotypical New Jersey and stereotypical New Yorker. Elect people who will represent you. And that is where the power comes from, not the money, not the influence. It comes from the people. Thank you guys. Oh, you want to
Or we're
go
done?
ahead? No,
No,
go ahead.
no. I'll be silenced. No, I'll be silenced as a woman. We'll silence the one woman in the room.
Go ahead, Caroline.
No, I was just gonna say that coming off of your point, and like, because the last thing we were going to talk about was like how youth should get involved and stuff. I think I lost my train of thought, but I think people are really waiting around for someone to show up, and that we have to be those people. If we want to get them out, we don't wait around for someone to do it. Like,
No.
be that person. Be that person that shows up. Don't stand by and wait for someone else to do it. So yeah, I'll be silenced now. Don't worry.
No, Caroline and Iver both touched on something that I want to finish up with tonight. Be the change you want to see. My aunt always used to tell me that when I was a kid. Be the,
This is so poetic. Oh my god.
be the change that you want to see in the world. All right? If you think that there is something wrong or that you think is wrong, stand up and fight it and show the change that you want to see. Thank you guys so much for chiming into the second episode of 12 Takes. Miss Caroline McKeon, Declan Meyer of
Not my name.
the respectable New Jersey and New York. We're so thankful to have them on. Iver, I was so grateful to have him be a part of this today. We will see you guys next week.